all of America. Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm not going to take a timeout. I'm going to get to Philly.500 here. And I want to ask him a question here. And it's something Jace Daniel. And I want to see what he says, because you homers were pretty damn good. So I want to get this. Let me get my we've had a change in direction here a little bit. So let's bring in Philly.500. Brother, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good.
A buzzsaw here.
Let's rock and roll. Let's go.
Right.
What is it?
So
what could it possibly be?
First off, let me ask you this. Starting from scratch, if you had to pick the first player to build your roster and to build your football team in the NFL, what quarterback would you take number one to build your team from scratch?
Honestly, Patrick Mahomes.
Okay.
Well, that would be my one.
Get this, Philly. I think there's 5 guys.
Okay.
I don't really think there's any more than 5 guys. So Mahomes.
Okay. Mahomes one.
Okay. And I'll give you mine after. Okay. Who would be 2?
That 2, I have 2 and 3. 2 and 3 really close. Really, really close. I'll give the slight edge to Josh Allen.
Okay.
And it's close.
Number 3.
Hurts.
Hurts over Joe Burrow.
Oh, yeah.
Hurts.
The only reason I say Josh Allen is because I think physically, I think he's got the tools. I remember that playoff game versus the Chiefs where it was in overtime, and he did everything he could in that moment to win that game. So I feel like in the right situation, he could win the big game. I would put him.
I don't want to pollute this question. Who's 4?
Burrow.
Okay. And I really think there's only one more. I'm not building it around Herbert, you know?
No, Herbert's a choker. The guy throws 5 interceptions in one game.
Who would you put at 5?
That's a good question.
Kid in Baltimore?
I would probably lean to Lamar Jackson, but to me, he's got the same issue, in my opinion, as like Dak Prescott and stuff. He hasn't won those big games, but he's won 2 MVPs, so I probably have to put him there.
Here is if I had to build the football team from scratch, I'd put Burrow 1. I believe he's a better passer than Mahomes. I think he's a better quarterback, period. I think Mahomes just does so much. I got Allen 2. I've got Mahomes 3. I'll tell you one thing too, Philly. The Eagles exposed Mahomes a little bit. You get internal pressure on that kid and you run him around and he has no running game. That guy looked terrible in that game.
I think that any quarterback that you expose in that way is going to have a problem.
That's fair. Brady struggled with internal pressure.
I think any quarterback, what makes Allen and Hurts so valuable is that they can get out of those situations. And Mahomes in a lot of ways can too. But I got to give it to Mahomes. He's won 3 Super Bowls. He lost talent like guys like Tyreek Hill. Still,
he's been to 5.
And he's been to 5. And then he split with Hurts, although I think Hurts plays better head-to-head against him than anybody else in the league. And then I think that,
great take.
He took an overtime. He took a team against the 49ers in overtime of the Super Bowl. I got to give him the slight edge right now.
I've got Lamar 4, and I got Jalen. Now, look, I don't mind people moving those guys around. Do you not agree? Outside of those 5 guys, is there anybody else that you would throw in to supplant any one of those 5 guys. I mean, I look down the list here of the quarterbacks in the league here, and you know what? Because I got this topic from Chase Daniels. Chase is like, there's 10 guys that he would take over Hurts, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I see that.
No way.
Okay,
No way.
and I'm like, well, no, but Philly, it's not who's the better guy. It's if you were to draft a quarterback right now, who would you take number 1 or number 2 or number 3 to build your football team from scratch with no Devontae on the team, no AJ? You had to build it up with rookies. I think it's a different conversation than the guy who's in the room right now because, again,
I got to tell you, Sills, this is going to sound crazy, but I might have to change my 2 and 3. I might put Hurts over Allen.
Yeah, but let me throw this at you. The Eagles never thought that because they put him in the 2nd round. They didn't think.
I don't think I honestly don't think they thought he was what he was. But I think today we've gone like to such a degree where that all the statistics and regular season seems to matter more than what used to matter.
Because it's how you're paid.
Winning.
Because it's how you're paid.
But the truth is I would always rather have the guy that could win in the playoffs and win a Super Bowl than a guy that couldn't. And you got to give it to Hurts.
Okay, well, let me ask you this. Do you think, and I'll ask you this question one more time after this topic, do you believe that the Eagles would have won that Super Bowl if Barkley's not on that team?
No, because Barkley did something that was incredible. However, when they got to the Super Bowl, Barkley didn't do anything. And it was Hurts and his ability to throw in that game along with the defense.
Then I'll rephrase the question. Do you think the Eagles would have got to the Super Bowl if Barkley wasn't on that team?
Yes. Because I think that defense was really good. And I think the distance between the Eagles and everybody else is huge. I think the team last year the Eagles had was really one of the better Super Bowl teams I've seen in a long time. And I think the gap between them, Washington, Detroit was that big.
The first 4 games of the year, they were throwing the ball and they were 2-2. The last, when they got out of that, they limited the quarterback's throws and they increased the carries. You still hold to that? You think they would have won the Super Bowl?
Well, I mean that 2-2 when they were 2-2, I think they were a lot different because I count. What I'm saying is that would it have been harder? I mean, Barkley made a huge difference. There's no doubt, but I also think a big part of that season is the defense. That defense was lights out, and after they put DeJean in after that Tampa game, they started playing much better. So I'm not saying that I'm not trying to minimize Barkley's impact. I just think that the gap between the Eagles and everybody else was so great. I think the Eagles were a Super Bowl caliber team like they were 2 years prior. I think Barkley put them over the edge to win it.
Yeah, but the quarterback was turning the ball over the year before. He had 17 turns. He had 17
turnovers. They started 10-1. They totally collapsed, right? But the year before that, they were in the Super Bowl and almost won it. They didn't have Barkley. They had Miles Sanders. And they weren't that – I mean, they were somewhat different, but they weren't that much different.
They had 70 sacks that year.
They did. They did.
And they were number 2. They were number 2 in defense. Listen, I think it's a great conversation because you're right. That defense, and I won't lie to you, dude, and I'm not going to dismiss it. That's one of the best defenses I've ever seen in postseason play.
Yeah.
I mean, they got after people, man.
I thought so too. And I think Barkley was what really put them over the edge. But I still think if you take Barkley off that team, let's say you have DeAndre Swift or Miles Sanders, and you're going to tell me that number 1 defense that they probably would have had, maybe they have to throw a little more, couldn't have beaten Washington and gotten to the Super Bowl? I disagree. I think they could have.
All right. Let me go.
They might not have won, But
let me go to another one here. And Xander and I had a really good conversation on this. So the kid in Chicago that just got let me see. Here it is. Kyler Gorn is a slot corner, and he just signed, and he's the highest paid guy at that position in the NFL. Signed a 3-year, $40 million deal with 31 guaranteed. Okay, that comes out to roughly around 13.5.
I'll take it.
The top corners right now are making 30 and north of 30. My question to you is, and I think Xander gave me the number, they've brought in 5 corners. They got Keely Ringo. They signed Adoree Jackson. If I'm Cooper DeJean, the Eagles are telling you, aren't they, that they do not believe he could play corner. Vic even said, Vic said he wants to keep him in the slot.
Yeah, but do you think it's because he can't play outside corner or because he's just so...
No, I said I think the Eagles don't think they can. Because their actions are showing you that.
Yeah. That's not the take I took. I thought it was more that he was so good in the slot that they didn't want to move him out. I actually look at Cooper DeJean like this, and I said this about DeJean. I don't see DeJean as just a typical outside corner anyways. I think he's one of these guys that you have to use differently. I think he's got to be like the way almost the Eagles use Malcolm Jenkins late in his career, where you need him in the slot, you play him in the slot. You need him on the outside, You want to match him up with a tight end, you need him at safety. He's got to float, I think. I think he could play every position in that secondary. And I think that you need to move him around depending upon the matchups. I think that's the best way in the long run to utilize Cooper DeJean.
That's a $17 million annual difference.
I know. And I'm not saying he's going to like it. No, he's not going to like it.
I'm staying in Philly because you like me in the slot. I mean, that dude eating 17 annually a year because you like me in the slot and I believe and you believe, I happen to think he could too. If you're not going to move him now when Slay's off the team and you're rifling all these other guys in and you got Keely penciled in right now as the starter, if not now, when?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I know that Cooper DeJean probably wants to go outside, get paid like it. So it's an interesting thought, because it's still a few years away from, I think, being an issue. But it's really going to depend on how Ringo's playing. Like, what if Ringo and Adoree aren't playing so well and you have another defensive back? Do you push him outside during the year? It's something that could happen. But
so you value Ringo? You value Ringo more over Cooper because you're waiting to see if he can win the spot?
No, I don't. But
I'm with you. I'm with you on this. Yeah. I'm with you on this. I think he can go out there and play it.
Yeah,
but the slot corner is more of a safety. That's the words of Vic Fangio. It's a glorified safety spot. It's not a corner spot, dog.
But I got to tell you, I think, look, I know the importance of an outside corner. I get it. But, you got to look at this guy's skill set. You can use him if a defensive coordinator can figure ways to use him in certain matchups. I think you'll then be utilizing his abilities to the utmost. And I think that just looking at him as either an outside corner or inside corner, I think it's doing him a disservice in the long run of what his potential could be. Now, maybe that affects his money. He doesn't like it. That's a whole different story. But this is a kid that can play every position in the secondary as far as I'm concerned.
Don't you agree? Again, the Eagles play a different style too. When there's no such thing in Philly as a lockdown corner because you play zone. You play 97.8% of the time in zone. You play 3% man.
Right.
So again, and by the way, they played that way in college. Both Q and DeJean at Toledo and Iowa played zones. I'm not ripping anyone. They're a perfect fit for the style of defense. That's why they drafted them. It's not, I'm just saying as a player, my agent comes to me and goes, hey, bro, you're eating $17 million a year. If you sit in that slot, the highest paid guy makes 13.5. Wait a minute. The other guys are making $33, $34 million. By the time his deal comes up, he could be up there $40 million. And you're going to keep me in a slot position, the highest paid guy is $13 million? I got a problem with that.
Well, here's what I'll say to that, though. And this is where I think if you listen to Howie in the past, the way they view certain guys, if they view you as like a weapon, right? They didn't see Saquon Barkley as, oh, he's just a running back, but a specific weapon with a unique talent. They'll pay you what you want. They'll pay you more than somebody else at a position because of your unique skill set. And I think that's the way they would probably handle Cooper DeJean.
That's a great take. That's a great take. All right, let me ask you this here, and I like that take, that they would reward the kid because of the importance of what he brings to a defense, because he plays in the middle of the field and he's covering tight ends and backs out of the field. That's a great take, and I appreciate that. All right, so Howie and Nick yesterday, I took a lot away from it. Now you tell me, and I'm gonna read something to you here. This is the words of Nick Sirianni. The profile of a tight end, and what we're looking at a tight end groom, is this. You don't have to have a one guy fit all. You can have a couple players doing this and blocking and catching. To me, it sounds like the Philadelphia Eagles have redefined the tight end position, because you got the fucking guy in the room right now that does all. He can block, he can catch. And to me, when I heard Nick say this, it sounds to me like the Eagles are going by committee at tight end. Doesn't that sound like a committee?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like Goddard's going to be here, even though he's still on the roster. So that's exactly what it sounds like. That's what they're going to do, you know. And who are you going to draft? And I'm sorry, there's one or two guys in the draft, as far as I'm concerned, I think can start. So any of these guys you bring in, I don't know how ready they're going to be. So yeah, it's going to be by committee if you get rid of them.
Here's another one here that I thought was interesting. So Howie Roseman talked about the draft this year not being that hot. And he said this: there's never been a draft in NFL history that's had 32 graded picks at any time in 89 years since the draft's been instituted in 36. This year especially. So if I'm sitting at 32 and I'm sitting down there and he knows that there's not a first-round guy, but when I look at Malaki Starks and go, that guy could start right now for me. He can play right now for me. And the rest of the guys don't really have a first-round grade. Dude, I just had Jay Gruden on. Jay Gruden doesn't even think Shedeur Sanders is a first or second rounder. He thinks he's a third-round grade, but he'll go in the first round because that's what teams do. So for me, I ask you here, if you're at 32, doesn't Malaki Starks make more sense than any other guy in the draft? Because how he's looking at that pick, he said value, Philly, yesterday. He went like this: value pick matches the talent. If you don't have a guy down there matching the pick with talent, why are you taking the fifth best edge rusher?
I agree. I agree. Here's what I'll say, because there's something else that Howie said in the press conference. He said, my DNA is to be aggressive. That's what he said, to be aggressive. They're not 32 first-round picks in this draft. To me, I think they're going up. I think he's going to trade up. And I think, and this is I know a lot of people don't agree with me, but I think Malaki Starks is going to be the guy, because the Eagles have done enough money management. They need to now acquire talent onto this roster for next year. And if you get a Malaki Starks, who I believe can start right away, you now have a rookie at safety, which will free you up to extend Reed Blankenship. To me, it's killing two birds with one stone. And I think Malaki Starks is way more in play than people think, because I've said this, the edge rushers aren't going to be there. They're all going to go early. Nobody wants to pay these guys $40+ million. They're going to go early. So Starks is going to be the best value pick. unless somebody gives him a bunch to trade out of the first round, like a first-round pick next year, I honestly think they move up a little bit and snag Malaki Starks. And I think it's going to surprise a lot of people.
Why not do this? Malaki Starks was a track and field guy at Georgia too. Why not put him in the slot and put out DeJean out in the corner?
I don't know. I don't know that they want. I mean, they need a safety. They don't have a safety. I don't know.
I think replacing Slay is going to be harder than you think. Keely Ringo is not going to cover it.
Well, we'll see about Ringo. I think Adoree Jackson could come in and do a competent job if need be. But to me, who are you going to have at safety? Sidney Brown? I don't trust him. The other kid that they got what they need, I don't trust him either. I need somebody. If I get Malaki Starks, who looks like I like Nick Amon-Wari, and then I went back and started watching this kid even more. This kid's my number one safety now. I think he fits the Eagles perfectly. And I think he would be a great pick. I do. So
I think listen to this. This is what Kirby Smart said about him when he first walked on this field at Athens, Georgia. It took him, with all these guys that have gone in the draft, 1 week to go, that's my safety. He knew immediately just how great he was of a player. Why am I going to take a gamble on a guy who played at fucking Marshall? Or a guy, I don't know, man. That guy looks like the surefire thing.
Yeah, and I think at some point, I mean, the Eagles have done this whole all season. They've been worrying about the money, the future paying this position, that position. At some point, you have to accumulate some sort of talent for this year. And I look at it like, what? Reed Blankenship's going to be a free agent next year. They're going to let him walk? No, I think they're going to want to extend him. I think it's the perfect opportunity to plug in a first-round safety for the next 4 or 5 years, and then you can take care of the other positions in the secondary.
Last couple ones here for you. I thought this was you tell me how you – I'm going to tell you how I read this, and you tell me if you read it different. So Howie was asked the question about defensive tackles, and here's the quote: interior tackles, defensive tackles, interior pressure is vital and the key to success. This was the words that he used in the press conference. Well, that doesn't define Jordan Davis in any way. He never brought up run stopper. He brought up interior pressure. That kid's not on the field on third downs. I think that's a telling sign to me that they may pick that fifth-year option up, but giving that guy, I'll tell you this, if they pick that fifth-year option up, there's no way they're giving him the 3-year contract extension, because most of the time they give the 3-year extension using the fifth-year option. So don't you think that was telling a little bit about if that D tackle's down there, like Walter Nolan or somebody like that, that kind of spells the end of Jordan Davis?
If they take a defensive tackle in round 1, then I agree. It's the end. Because you're not going to have 3 first-round picks that you're paying all big money to. So I agree. If they took Nolan, then they will pick up that contract, let him play it out, and he's going to go. But I don't think they're taking a defensive tackle in round 1. I think they take a mid-round defensive tackle that they develop like they did Milton Williams. That's what I think they're going to look for. And I think they're going to bank that the guys continue to develop. And hopefully Jordan Davis, figures it out and comes back, has a good year. I like the way he finished the season, sacking the championship game, sacking the Super Bowl. Maybe something clicked, but I think it's really going to depend on how he comes in shape. I think he needs to come in like 320, 325, like come in better shape, and then let's see what he could do.
You think they trade that pick? You think they'd ever trade that pick? I talked to Xander about this yesterday. Traded to Seattle for the 18th pick, and they go up that high. How high do you think they will go? I mean, 18's awful high from 32.
No.
If they're going to make a move, how high? What's the highest you think they would move up in this draft?
What would a third round, like a third and a fifth round next year give you? So maybe 10 slots. I think anywhere from about 22 up is where you're going to see them trade. So that's what I think. I mean, you got a lot of third-round picks. You should be able to package one of those.
And next year.
So I think you're okay to do that and get up and get a guy. They're not going to pick 20 guys in the next 2 years, right? They're not going to have that many guys picked. They're not going to use all those draft picks. I think they trade up most likely. They could trade back, but if they do trade back, I want a first-round pick. I want a first-round pick in 2026.
What do you make of the Cowboys and the Dolphins talking about trading Tyreek Hill to the to the Dallas Cowboys and putting him on the other side of CeeDee Lamb?
Well, I think that with all the stuff going on off the field with Tyreek Hill, he would be the perfect Cowboy. That's what they do, right?
Hey, did you hear they're talking of moving up in the draft? The Cowboys want to move up in the draft.
See, I was interested in seeing what they do with Dak because, there's been some whispers about him trading Cleveland. I think Pittsburgh was another team. Could they do something like that? Which I tell you, I think is the smartest move because I think they're pretty much done with him. He ain't gonna win you nothing. You already know that. Yeah. So you might as well start over.
You think they would? You think they would move up to get that kid from Boise State, that running back?
If they're smart, because
which they're not.
No, they're not. I mean, you need weapons on that offense. You need a running game. You need another receiver. I mean, if you look at Dallas honestly, and you say, all right, well, what scares me about them? CeeDee Lamb, that's it. Their running game don't scare me. Their offensive line don't scare me. Their receivers besides CeeDee Lamb doesn't scare me. So to me, yeah, you need a running. They need something like that. So if I was them, I would do it, but I think they're too stupid.
There's nothing about the Cowboys except Mark Holmes that scares me. That's it.
Right.
That's the only thing. That poor guy, man. I feel bad for him, man.
I know.
I don't know. Rooting for a shitty team is not the way to go. If I were him, you know what my next team would be if I'm Mark Holmes? Start rooting for the Longhorns.
There you go.
Hey, Philly,
right?
Thank you, brother. I appreciate
Thank you, my man. Appreciate it. Take care.
Check my friend out, Philly.500, there with his great show. We're going to take a time out. Do me a favor, guys. Please hit the like button. Keep it here, National Football Show.
This is Eric. When he